The audit trail and the dissemination information can be used either in tandem or separately depending on how much information you need to see. The audit trail, seen on the audit tab, will show changes to information. And the dissemination information, seen when you click the dissemination button, open up Excel, and it will export all the information from all the tabs and all the various fields into these tabs below. So the case details, admin notes, requests, items, persons, impressions, evaluations, and the audit trail itself. So if you wanted to, you could work exclusively through here if it was necessary. So what the dissemination information shows is a little bit more than the audit trail, and you'll see here, go back to the audit trail, if we were just to dissect this information, the audit trail shows the table name, and the table would just correspond to either the tab or the section. So table items would be a table. It's basically, think of it as a more robust spreadsheet that holds the information, and that's associated with the items. So the items are in the request tab here. So this item for case ID 22, which is the ID that gets associated to the case in the upper right hand corner when you enter the case number upon adding a new case, record ID 17. So we wouldn't see that in this field. There's some hidden information that goes on behind the scenes that we would be able to see in the dissemination information. So in the items, record 17 is the one that corresponds to item number JR1. So something on JR1 was changed. So if we go back, we would see that that field is the SDelete, which stands for soft delete, and that's what this field right here is called behind the scenes. So the delete button was pressed, and it went from the old value of 0. So anytime you see a checkbox and it's not checked, that corresponds to a 0. And anytime you see a -1, that means that the box has been checked or is currently checked. So it went from not checked to checked. And it did so on this date at this time, and it was done by this user. And that user corresponds to the user information that is captured upon login. If we go to the next item, we see that something in the same row from the same item was changed as well, and that was the receive date, and it was updated from 6/28 to 6/29. Now what the dissemination information shows is anytime you add something, let's just go back to our items field, like this item here that we were just talking about, the date that it was entered and by whom also gets logged. So if you see no audits in a case for, let's say, we see 0 audits for record ID not 17 in the items tab, which we can infer would be this one, and we can confirm in the items tab. So 18, there's nothing in the audit trail for 18, for record ID 18 in the table, not table items table. So we could infer then that because there's no updates, that this record inserted on this date by this person, all that information remains unchanged. If it did change, it would show in the audit trail just as this information is shown. So for instance, that record was soft deleted, the date changed, and then it was also undeleted at that point. And so between the two information, if we're just looking for ownership changes, for instance, if I change this to a different owner, close it out, then we open it up again, we'll see in the audit trail that the owner updated from this value to this value. And so, for instance, how we would interpret that would be, because names can be the same, there could be 2 Smiths, theoretically John Smith. So each employee gets a unique ID in the same way that each record in a table gets an ID. So this item had its own unique ID. Each of these people get their own unique ID too. So you'll need to interpret those by going to somebody with admin privileges who can manage the employees has this ID key. That's something that can be printed out as well or written down and referred to later, but it can be tracked down as the notion here. So we can see that it went from 4 to 3, so it went from Baumgartner to Smith. So if we open that case again, go to the audit trail, it went from Baumgartner to Smith. And it did so at this time, on this date, and it was done so by this person. So that way, you can track cases if something goes awry and you need to figure out who entered a record. We can go back to the dissemination, and for our unchanged record, we can see that all of this information was entered by this person because there was no updated information. And if it was updated, we can see who made the updates here. So between those two functions, you get a global idea of what was entered, when it was entered, by whom it was entered, and then how it changed along the way. So if you ever need to give a case out for dissemination, you can just click this out and save this file, which saves on your desktop as dissemination. You can just save that to a file and then hand that off to whoever you need to hand it off to.